Hello everyone. So welcome to my new educational hacking series called Hacking with Jan, aka Gentle Introduction to Hacking. And let's just get started. So, some agenda for today is actually we'll start with introduction. Then I will tell you something about my motivation, why I have decided to record such a video. Then I will tell you some general information about this particular video and also about upcoming videos as well. Uh, Today's biggest chapter is actually owasp, where I will uh, take you through some of the owasp projects which have been very useful for me and which I use a lot during my pen testing. Then we will also build our own small but sufficient lab, and then we will talk about the injections. Okay, so short introduction about me. I'm Jan Kopecký and I'm a proud founder of penetration testing company, which is based in Czech Republic, and the web page is captest.cz. We do provide variety of services, traditional, let's say, pen testing, also training and red teaming services as well. On top of that, I'm also red teamer in NN, which stands for Nationale Nederlanden, which is a Dutch insurance company. I'm also owasp Czech chapter leader. I've been doing this for I guess 7 years, so it's really great fun, and I enjoy being chapter lead a lot. And yeah, something about my skills. Well, I've been hacking web for nearly 15 years, and I also managed to get some experience in other fields like hacking infrastructure, also breaking mobile applications. I should say that I do prefer hacking Android over iOS, uh, just my preferences. Yeah, and then reversing and exploitation, and I also do like social engineering. The reversing and exploitation and social engineering are more a hobby. It doesn't really uh, it's not my primary area of interest, but yeah, I do enjoy those activities as well. Obviously, I dedicate most of my free time to hacking because my job is my hobby, and honestly, that's quite awesome. And except hacking, I actually like to go to gym and for my MMA lessons because I've been doing mixed martial arts for I guess around 5 years. So I really do enjoy it. Oh, and on top of that, from time to time, I like to play video games because, well, you should relax from time to time if you want to avoid the burnouts, huh? Okay, so let's take a look on the next slide. Motivation. So on this slide, I would like to explain to you why I have decided to create this video series. So the main reason, quite frankly, is that I have been using resources provided by community for a very long time. As I said on the last slide, I have been uh, into hacking field basically for slightly over 15 years, and especially back then, like 10-15 years ago, getting information related to hacking, that wasn't an easy task. Actually, that was quite challenging. So I read what I could, I read the blog posts, I bought books, uh, but still I had to explore most of the stuff on my own, which on one hand is the best way how you can learn that you are actually testing out stuff, but on the other hand, it's very time consuming, right? Uh, and at certain moment, I started to feel like, okay, Jan, you have been using community resources a lot. Now time has come for you to contribute as well. So I thought that creation of such an educational video could be of a success actually, and maybe it could help bring some new people to the industry. As you can see, I crossed intentionally the word talents, because I don't really think we need talents. We just need people, because I do believe that hard work and dedication can actually beat talent. And even if this video series should bring one more person to this IT security industry, I would consider it a big success for me. One more thing is that uh, there are plenty of educational videos and blog posts out there on the internet. Definitely go out, check them out, use them, because they are of great value. But I have observed, at least at some of them, one small problem, and that is that they do require a reader to have certain previous knowledge, right? And I would like to keep this series as beginner friendly as possible, right? So I will explain basic stuff actually. I will even show some basic usage of Kali once we get to building our own lab section. So I really try to keep those videos as beginner friendly as possible. With that being said though, I will touch on advanced topics here and there. So, but I will really do my best at explaining. So I really do hope that I will be sufficiently clean with my explanation. Yeah, and the last point is that actually, well, part of my job is giving trainings, mostly secure development trainings and infrastructure hacking trainings, and I do enjoy giving trainings, so I actually thought it would be nice experience to try to make educational video series and try if I will enjoy it actually. Okay, so let's just check the general info about this hacking series. So my goal is to do at least one video per 2 weeks. Yeah, it's a bit tough deadline, but you won't get anywhere with setting your goals low, right? So that is what I would like to achieve. Uh, we will actually start today with covering some basic owasp materials, which I do believe every pen tester should know, or at least be aware that they do exist. And not just pen testers, but also bug bounty hunters can find there pretty useful information, and of course developers. So that is going to be the biggest part of today's video actually. I will take you through the owasp top 10, owasp testing guide, owasp ASVS, owasp OpenSAM, and owasp ZEP. And for each and every project, I will share with you my experience, like what is good about this project, how you can use it, and some tips and tricks. So it's definitely not going to be, our goal is not to go through the whole document, which would be super time consuming, but rather show you quick and easy way how you can start using those documents efficiently. The part of today's video is actually going to be setting up our own lab, which is going to be simple but sufficient for what we will do next. One important mention, I'm definitely not good at video editing, and by that I mean not at all. I have no graphical skills, to be honest, and I'm not really planning on mastering it, because unfortunately I don't have time for that. So if I make some mistake in the video or something doesn't work, well, it's time to improvise. Of course, if there is a good feedback from the community, I might do more videos. I might touch on different topic than just web application security. We might cover uh, Android pen testing or Android security in general. We might do some basics of reverse engineering, touch the topic of exploitation, but yeah, well, that's in a far future, I would say. First of all, we will actually have to cover all the categories in owasp top 10 documents. No worries, we will go through the document in a few seconds. Well, and the last point is that I don't really use slides that much. I really use them as, let's say, placeholders for the most important points I should not forget to mention. But I really do prefer that hands-on approach, meaning that most of the time I will be in my VM with my browser, and I will be, or my terminal, and I will show you actually stuff practically. I will not just talk about how to do something, but actually show you how to do it. Okay, now let's actually start with this owasp section. So first of all, it would be fair to mention what the owasp is. I mean, you can easily go to owasp.org and you will find their official definition what owasp is. I will rather tell you how I personally see owasp. For me, owasp is actually a group of motivated people who decided that they will dedicate part of their free time into making owasp projects better, or let's say uh, making the world of application security better by providing some resources through and to owasp. So uh, owasp is non-profit organization. That's important to say. We are vendor neutral, so we are not really recommending any vendors, and we are vendor neutral. There is, or sorry, there are few people actually over the globe who are full-time owasp employees, because owasp is now a big beast, I would say, and you just need someone who is dedicated, for example, to do accounting and to take care about owasp IT and stuff like that. So owasp has a few employees, but the vast majority, like thousands of people, are actually volunteers who just like to share the knowledge and create the content and help the community. So that's what I really do like about it. Let's start with first document, and I dare to say the mostly known one, which is owasp top 10. So let me go to my VM. Okay, I will click this one, shut it down. Yes, please. Okay, so here we have the owasp top 10 document. You can very easily find it by just googling owasp top 10 version 2017, and you will find it very easily. As I said, owasp top 10 is the most known project produced actually by owasp. At certain point of time, I would say that many people and even pentesters saw owasp top 10 even as a standard for web application pen testing, right? Because there was basically no other standard. owasp top 10 was only thing which was out there, somehow summarizing different vulnerabilities, the most critical ones. And yeah, many people get used to it, that this is de facto standard for pen testing of web applications. Well, times have changed, so now we have different projects for that, but I would still like to spend some time to tell you a bit more about this owasp top 10 document. So first of all, what this document is? Well, it summarizes the most common flaws with the most significant impact. As simple as it gets. There is, I do believe, more than 50 IT security companies which do provide results to owasp, like their statistics, and also more than, I think, 500 individuals who are participating, and they do provide their pen testing statistics. And based on those numbers, which are gathered from companies and individual security researchers, then based on those numbers, the top 10 is actually created. So let me scroll a bit down in this document. In forward, obviously, you can find more information what this project is about. As I said, I'm definitely not going to go line by line. You can definitely and you should read those documents in your free time, but I will just explain what I consider to be the most important stuff. So yeah, we can actually start with this picture right here because this one is quite important. There was owasp top 10 version in 2013, and you can see which were the top 10 vulnerabilities back then. So you can see that it started with injection, second was broken authentication, third one cross-site scripting. And here on the right side, you can actually see uh, what was the top 10 in 2017. So you can see that some of the categories from the older version got actually merged, which makes sense honestly. Insecure direct object reference and missing function level access control got merged into what's now called broken access control. There is new category which popped up like XML, external entities, also insecure deserialization and insufficient logging and monitoring. So this is definitely a good picture if you want to see which bugs were most common back then and which bugs are most common nowadays. Uh, okay, let me just dive into the first example, how to actually read this document and how to work with it. So you always start with well, obviously name of the category. So in this case, number one is injection flaws. And here you always have the description of the attack vector, meaning how or what is the source of the attack or what could be the problematic, for example, inputs. So right here we can see that it says almost any source of data can be an injector vector, and environment variables, parameters, external and internal web services, and so on and so on. So here you can see what actually uh, poses the risk to your application. In security weakness, you have actually description, more detailed description, what is actually the security weakness. So let's just read this one paragraph. Injection flaws are very prevalent, particularly in legacy code. Injection vulnerabilities are often found in SQL, LDAP, XPath, or NoSQL queries, OS command, XML parsers, SMTP headers, etc., etc. So here you can actually see what technologies can be affected by injection flows, because I have seen people who actually thought that injection strictly refers to SQL injection, but that is not correct. It's actually, you can inject into many different, let's say, contexts. So yeah, it can be SQL injection, LDAP injection, XPath. Depends where your input actually ends up being used, right? And right here you have some description of the business impact. So obviously injections can result in data loss, corruption, or disclosure to unauthorized parties, etc., etc. Uh, okay, here you have some um, brief, let's say, checks whether your application might be vulnerable to injection attacks or not. So let's check out the bullet number one. User supplied data is not validated, filtered, or sanitized by the application. So if this happens for your application, that you don't validate, filter, nor sanitize the data, you are in great risk of being vulnerable to injection attack. Right here, we have a few more points, or rather like questions or statements, which then you can ask yourself and try to estimate whether your application is actually vulnerable or not. But again, keep in mind that this is definitely not like detailed and deep testing technology. This is rather, let's say, a quick overview, we will get into owasp testing guide, which actually solves this problem and shows you how to test properly for injection flows. Here you even have the example of attack scenarios. So here you can see some SQL code, right? With some Java around that. And yeah, this is the typical actually example of SQL injection where you are concatenating the raw SQL query with the parameter, in this case called ID, which is coming directly from the user. And obviously this parameter isn't validated in any way, so this is vulnerable to SQL injection in this case. Again, this is just an example, so please keep that in mind. On the right side, you have also some tips, high-level overview, let's say, how you can prevent SQL injections. So definitely, let's recommend to check out. And some references at the end, actually, of chapter number 1. So here are the places where you can actually learn more information about the injection flows. Maybe one thing I should mention as well is here you can see that exploitability 3, prevalence 2, detectability 3. So if you are not sure what those numbers actually mean, you can just scroll a little bit up, and here is a description. So if the exploitability is easy, the value is 3. So you can see that injection flows are usually easy to exploit. Prevalence, if you don't know what prevalence 2 means, you can just check it out here. And it means that it's quite common. It's not widespread, it's not uncommon, it's just common. So here you can see the legend, so to say, or explanation of the numbering here. So that's pretty much all for owasp top 10. Now let's go for the next document, which is on our to-do list for today, and that is owasp testing guide. Well, owasp testing guide, that is already a bigger beast. As you can see, it actually has more than 200 pages, and this is actually a thorough testing methodology. So how this document is structured, again, I do recommend you going through the whole document. So please read the introduction, read the owasp testing framework, because you have some important tips and information inside. But for us and for the demonstration how to use this document and what you can actually find inside, the crucial is going to be chapter number 4. Because chapter number 4 is then divided into subcategories. So for example, identity management testing, authentication testing, authorization testing. And then under this category, you have particular flows which fall under that category. And you have the explanation how to actually test for this particular bug, in this case, directory traversal. So how to test for that. We will actually demonstrate how to use this document on input validation testing, because well, we will spend our first actually hands-on will be with SQL injection, so we can just check it out, testing for SQL injection. Okay, so if you are interested how to test for SQL injection, this is what you should read. Again, a little bit explanation of the structure of this document. So you always have some summary, what actually is SQL, and then what is SQL injection. You have mentioned about different attack types. So let's say that here you have mentioned about so-called blind SQL injection or out-of-band SQL injection. So you have, let's say, more like theoretical description of the topic. But here actually the more technical stuff is already coming. So it starts with the chapter how to test, and here are some detection techniques, right? So here the document says that certain characters can actually cause problems for databases like MySQL, MS SQL, Oracle, and so on. It can be, for example, here they are mentioning the single quote or semicolon could cause a problem, and here you have example of the error message. If you actually see such a error message being returned to you after you submitted single quote or semicolon with your request, then that is a big indicator, I would say, that you might as well be looking into SQL injection. Of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be SQL injection. It doesn't necessarily have to be exploitable, but it can also be a real deal, like a real bug. Okay, so here you have standard SQL injection testing, which again gives some general information how to test for this vulnerability with multiple examples. So here you have, for example, stacked queries example, which is described right here. Then you actually have some tips for how you can fingerprint the database to figure out whether it's MySQL, Oracle, MS SQL Server, or Postgre. And then finally, you have exploitation techniques. So after you learned how you can detect and identify and fingerprint the database, here you actually have instructions how you can carry out this attack and actually exploit SQL injection to dump the database and get those juicy data out of the database. All right, so I will just scroll a little bit down. Here you can see that they are talking about Boolean exploitation technique and explaining what that is. Here you have another example with out-of-band exploitation technique, also error-based exploitation technique. So as you can see, there are actually multiple ways how you can exploit a SQL injection. It's definitely recommended for you to master all of them, because you might end up, and you probably will end up, in situations where one technique for one reason or other doesn't work, so you have to switch to different technique. Maybe that one doesn't work either, so you, well, bigger your arsenal of technique is, higher are the chances that you can actually exploit the bug. uh, yeah, and that's pretty much like all about this document. So uh, it's supposed to cover the main, and let me scroll up again, it's supposed to cover testing of all major, let's say, areas which which are there for an application. So as I said, authentication, authorization, session management, input validation, testing for error handling, etc. So if you are interested about how to test for error codes or how to analyze error codes, you have the description right here. There is one thing I would like to mention. OWASP testing guide is definitely a great project, and I do recommend to everyone to get familiar with it, because you can find there a lot of very useful information. But please don't think that after you read and master this document that you know each and every single hacking technique which is out there. That is not a reality. So there are many techniques which are not documented in this project. Let me come up with example. So maybe XSS DOM clobbering, because that is a vulnerability which is not that known. For those of you who hear this term for the first time, DOM clobbering, it is actually a real technique. I can just Google for it. So as a proof that I'm not making this name up. Oh, sorry. Okay, and DOM clobbering, and you can actually see that there are some articles about it. Portsvigger even has a lab for it, which is really great. So now if I go back to this document and search for DOM clobbering or just the word clobbering, you see that there are like no highlights, so it didn't actually find this word. So this is just a proof that uh, although OWASP testing guide is a really great document and great source of information, after you study it, please keep in mind that there are still many more hacking techniques which you can learn and master. Okay, fine. So that is for OWASP testing guide. Now let's switch to OWASP ASVS. ASVS stands for Application Security Verification Standard. So as I mentioned in the beginning of top 10 description, unfortunately some years back there was no such thing as a standard for penetration testing. Uh, it could happen, and it also happened, that imagine that you are owner of a company and you would like to hire third-party consultants to do a penetration testing for you, right? And if you asked them, uh, okay, what is, or can you give me some minimum what you can actually cover during your pen testing? Most probably both of them would give you some piece of paper or Excel sheet with some information about, you know, vulnerabilities which they do cover. But for pentester A and for pentester B, those documents would be most probably different, and that is not a good thing, meaning you as a customer, you wouldn't have that guarantee that neither pentester A nor pentester B will do that bare minimum. And you couldn't just ask them, okay guys, please use this methodology, because that methodology actually ensures at least the basic coverage. And this is where I see the biggest added value of OWASP ASVS project, because it actually tries to set those minimal requirements for web application testing. So let me again scroll a bit down in this document. Okay, scrolling. So what is important? Again, you can check the preface and what's new in version 4 on your own. I'm just going to focus on the most important things. So what is very important to say that ASVS is divided into three major levels. ASVS level 1, 2, and 3. Here you have nice description for which application uh, you should use particular level. So for example, ASVS level 1 is for low assurance level and is completely penetration testable. That means that even if you do black box testing, you can still execute ASVS level 1 check. ASVS level 2 is for applications that contain sensitive data, which requires protection, and it's the recommended level for most applications. And then the formal definition for level 3 is for most critical applications, applications that perform high value transactions, contain sensitive medical data, or any application that requires the highest level of trust. So uh, from my experience, I actually skip ASVS level 2. I usually do recommend to my clients the ASVS level 2, and for most critical applications, ASVS level 3. As you can imagine, for level 1, you will need less checks than for level 2, and same for level 3. So higher importance the application has, more thorough testing you have to perform, so to say. Okay, so let me just check quickly some, well, the agenda of this document and scroll to what looks cool. Okay, for example, this one, validation, sanitization, and encoding verification requirements. Let's click on it. Okay, so here you have the main chapter, validation, sanitization, and encoding verification requirements. And here is a subsection called input validation requirements. And here are checks which you have to perform. And now on the right side, you actually see whether this check should be performed for level 1 or level 3, level 2 or level 3, or for example, this one for all of them. So we can just, read the first check or requirement to get an idea what the checks actually look like. So verify that the application has defenses against HTTP parameter pollution attacks, particularly if the application framework makes no distinction about the sources of request parameters, get, post, cookies, and so on. So now you have a good idea what you should check. Well, if you don't know what parameter pollution attack is, we can just try to copy this text, go back to owasp testing guide and try to see if it has something like that. Oh, and it actually has. So HTTP parameter pollution, and again, the similar things we saw actually for a SQL injection. So you have some description, how the regular attacks looks like, uh, yeah, and expected results. How you can test for this with a gray box testing approach. So you can actually combine usage of ASVS with other OWASP materials. For some, okay, let's just take this one, 513 for example, verify that all inputs is validated using positive validation, which is also called whitelisting. And okay, let's say that you don't know what that means and you can't really find it in OWASP testing guide. So you can actually hit this button, which will bring you to owasp proactive controls. Just remember it's called C5. Let's click it. owasp proactive control. Okay. Yeah, sorry, it is in mine. And it was C5 category. You can click on it. And here you have the description. Input validation is a programming technique that ensures only properly formatted data may enter a software system component. And here you have some description, difference between whitelisting versus blacklisting, which one is better, which one you should use, uh, some explanation what are the regular expressions, and of course the description how the input validation should look like. Okay, so one maybe more important thing which I should stress a little bit more. So let me scroll up, okay, right here, and to this particular sentence, and is completely penetration testable. Why is this sentence important? Well, because ASVS honestly goes quite deep when it comes to web application testing, and basically with complete black box approach, meaning that you have no advantage over the attacker. You don't have access to source code of the application, nor to the developers, nor to the documentation. If you don't have that, you can't, for example, test according to ASVS level 2. And you might ask why, like why I can't test for it. Well, the answer is quite simple. Because there are some categories. Let me just find good example. Okay, where is logging? Because error handling and logging. So obviously, for example, this finding, verify that the application does not lock credentials or payment details. Well, this is quite hard to verify if you don't have access to the log files or the source code or to the documentation or developer, right? So that means that you just can't test for ASVS level 2 without having some kind of benefit compared to real bad guys, real attackers. And this is especially true for these like logging verification requirements. So this is quite important to say. Maybe when we are talking about black box approach, I mean black box approach. Again, for those of you who don't know what that means, black box basically means that you are really simulating the real attacker and you don't have any advantage. Like you don't get any credentials, you don't get documentation, nothing. These tests are, let's say, very frequently, well, companies buy them a lot because they just want to know how their applications would withstand the real attack, right? And this is what you are simulate with the black box test. But on the other hand, you should understand one important thing. We as a pen testers, we have limited time to find vulnerabilities, right? We usually get 5, 10, 15 days, but usually not much more. And that's pretty much about it. But real bad guys, if they are really dedicated, they can spend, like months on the task, right? Maybe even years if their motivation is really high enough. So it's not actually shame to go through gray box or white box actually testing, because it helps us as a pen tester to fight with that balance, right? So bad guys, they have almost unlimited time. So we as a pen testers with limited time, if we get access to source code, for example, or documentation, then we can test like more efficiently and also quickly. So that was just the reasoning why black box, although it's like mimicking the real attacker, it might not be the best choice for your application. Okay, so that was also the usage of this document. So of course you know now how to actually use it or what is inside, but who can take advantage of owasp ASVS? Well, I can say that at least three categories of people. So for sure, bug bounty hunters, pen testers, and developers, all of them, because for you as a pen tester it can be kind of checklist that you didn't forget to check some area of the application. If you are bug bounty hunter, you can also use it as a kind of checklist to see, okay, I have checked this, I have checked that. And if you are a developer, I would really recommend you also using this checklist, because you can make a lot of controls here, or a lot of checks actually, on your own. And again, if you don't know exactly what some requirement is about, then you can just visit other owasp sources, like owasp testing guide, for example, where you should find the answers, right? So yeah, this project is really handy for let's say many different professions, so to say. Okay, now let's check next OWASP project, which is OWASP OpenSAM, which stands for Software Assurance Maturity Model. Now, OpenSAM is a bit different from the previous projects, because all the previous projects, their main goal was to actually talk about the technical things, right? The technical stuff and vulnerabilities. This document is a bit different. It doesn't really deal with, let's say, security issues, but it rather deals with processes. I know that it maybe doesn't sound so fancy, you know, dealing with processes as it sounds when you say, okay, I'm hacking the application, but you must understand that if you want to do security on professional level, uh, some processes are actually required. If you as an organization want to achieve certain maturity and have a lower number of bugs in your application every sprint, then actually you have to also consider this possible process change or process improvements. So let's just take a look into this document. So here you have it. You have a software development, which OpenSAM divides into four key areas. First is governance, second construction, third verification, and the last one operation. And as you can see, each of those main categories, or how they call it, like business function, is then further divided into security practices. So for example, governance is divided into strategy and metrics, education and guidance, and policy and compliance. As we go through this document, I will actually focus just on this example, education and guidance, and I will try to explain to you how actually you can use OpenSAM. Again, let me remind you that this is rather the brief overview, not really like description of the whole project with everything inside, but it should give you at least the basic idea how you can work with the OpenSAM. Okay, so educational and guidance. So let's scroll a bit down in this document and let's actually find okay, before we will talk about that particular security practice, it's also important to say that similarly to owasp ASVS, owasp OpenSAM also has uh, four levels of maturity, let's say. So level 0, you would assign level 0 for a process or activity which basically hasn't really started yet. So if you don't do any education in your company, then probably in this category or for this security practice, your score would be 0. Level number 1 is initial understanding and ad hoc provision of security practice. Level 2, increase efficiency and or effectiveness of security practice. And 3, the highest level you can achieve is comprehensive mastery of the security practice at scale. You can actually go even one level above, which would be called 3 plus, and that means that you have comprehensive mastery of the security practice at scale, but you also do something on top of that, some extras. Okay, so governance, that's our chapter, and policy and compliance. So we can go through the first paragraph. Here you have the brief description what actually this security practice is about. So the policy and compliance practice is focused on understanding and meeting external oh, sorry guys. I said we will start with education and guidance, so let's just stick to it. Uh, because yeah, compliance, who likes compliance, right? So education and guidance. Uh, the education and guidance practice is focused on arming personnel involved in the software lifecycle with knowledge and resources to design, develop, and deploy secure software. With improved access to information, project teams will be better able to proactively identify and mitigate specific security risks that apply to their organization. And then some more information. So after actually reading this paragraph, you should have better understanding of what is the main purpose of this particular security practice. Okay, let's keep scrolling. Again, we are skipping the other categories. Uh, we won't really touch them, like strategy and metrics. We are only interested in education and guidance. So here, this is already important for us, education and guidance, and you can actually read here what is the objective for level 1. So offer development staff access to resources around the topics of secure programming and development. And that can be divided into two activities: conduct ethical security awareness training and build and maintain technical guidance. So this is, as I said, high level overview. So you know what you can expect in this security practice. We can also read the level 2. Educate all personnel in the software lifecycle with role-specific guidance on secure development. Conduct role-specific application security training. Utilize security coaches to enhance project teams. So here you can already see that level 2 is of course more demanding than level 1, because for level 1 you are good if you just have technical security awareness training. It really doesn't even have to go very deep, right? It just says awareness. But for level 2 you already have to have role-specific application security training. And for the level 3, create formal application security support portal. So that is the biggest achievement, or the highest level you can get here actually. Okay, let's keep scrolling. Okay, so our security practice is education and guidance. And what is actually this page about? It's assessment worksheet. So you can use this table if you are, let's say, trying to start with OpenSem in your own company. Before you actually start, you need to know what is your current level in certain areas, right? And this assessment worksheet actually helps you to do exactly that. So these are questions, and if you answer them, you will get basically the answer what is your level of maturity according to OpenSem. So again, let's take the example. Have developers been given high-level security awareness training? If you answer with annually, you get 1 point. And if you answer, does each project team understand where to find secure development best practice and guidance? Most. So if most of your developers or project team know where to actually find best practices and guidance, most of them, you get one additional point. And that means that you are at least in this area level 1. Then of course you can get to level 2 and ask next question. So are those involved in development process given role specific security training? And then you think about it and realize that actually you don't really have role specific training, so you answer no. And for the next question, are stakeholders able to pull in security coaches for use on projects? uh, Again, if you answer no, that actually shows that you are on uh, level 1, right? But you need to improve to actually get to next level in this security practice. So these questions can, as I said, help you to see your current level. Okay, a little bit more scrolling. And now the important chapter, the security practices. Okay, strategy and metrics, that's not for us. We are interested in come on, where are you? Education and the guidance. So here is another summary which actually shows objectives, activities. We have already seen them, but on top of that, here you have assessment and also the results. Especially the results section is very important, because here you will see what is the reward, so to say, for you if you decide to be OpenSem level 1 compliant. So the results, for example, let's say, let's stay with the level 1, increase developer awareness on the most common problems at the code level. maintain software with rudimentary security best practices in place, set baseline for security know-how among technical staff, enable qualitative security checks for baseline security knowledge. So these will be the results, the outcome you will actually get if you decide to follow the advices for implementation of this particular level. Uh, okay, and here actually comes, I would even say, the most important page, because it has the most information regarding this topic. So you have the activity, and here you have the more thorough description what the activity is about. So, you know, two activities: conduct technical security awareness training and build and maintain technical guidelines. And here you have some description how to do it actually. On the right side of this page, you again have for level 1 the assessment results, what are the success metrics, the costs, involved personnel, and related levels. Because this is also important, because if you decide to work on your education and guidance, you might as well fulfill some requirements in compliance, because uh, well, or in policy, because the policy might say only educated developers are allowed to touch production code, right? And if you educate the developers, then you can tick the requirements in the policy section, because you provide them actually the guidance on this level. And of course, this is the advice for level 1. If we keep scrolling, here you have the same information for level 2. Yeah, as I mentioned, the costs is also nice to have there, because it gives you an idea what kind of budget you should have ready, and which things are actually going to cost you some money. So let's look at this one. Costs: training library, build out or license, security service staff for hands-on coaching. So these are the costs which are there for implementation of OpenSUM level 2 for education and guidance. And again, you can see that higher is the level, more personnel is involved. So here you can see that level 1 aims only for developers and architects, but level 2, you have bunch of new roles which are actually affected by this security practice. Okay, so this was introduction of owasp OpenSAM. Maybe one tip. So you can just Google for OpenSAM GitHub, and you will find the Excel sheet there. And if you are actually curious about starting with OpenSUM, I would definitely recommend you downloading this Excel sheet, because it will make your assessment uh, way easier. So I have already downloaded this document. This is how it looks. Okay, attribution and license, interview. So as I said, this interview actually, this is these questions you should ask when you are trying to figure out what is the current level of the company where you are trying to implement OpenSAM. So you just talk to responsible people and fill the question here. The Excel is interactive, so actually it will count the score for you. So let's just give you an example right here: education and guidance. So what is the question? Do you require employees involved with application development to take SDLC training? And here you can answer yes, most of them. Okay. Has the training been customized for individual roles such as developers, testers, or security champions? And let's say that no, and just watch the score here. no, and you can see that it actually dropped, or the rating dropped. So if you go with your customer, or if you want to implement the OpenSAM in your own company, then you just need to find your colleagues which which can answer those questions for you if you don't know the answer by yourself. And if you answer all the questions here, then you will have the pretty good idea at which state, according to OpenSAM, you are at the moment. Then next important one, okay, this is not to edit. This is automatically actually counted based on the results from other workbooks. So from interview and from roadmap. So this is nice, let's say, graphical representation. And in the roadmap here, it is actually the questions which you should ask as you really start with OpenSAM implementation. So here you can see that again, it's divided into the same categories. So education and guidance. Here is the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and even phase 4. And again, you can just answer yes, some of them. Okay, yes, the majority. And here you can see how the score actually changes. And again, here you have some nice graphs, which then you can use to show, for example, to your management after a few weeks or months since you have implemented those new rules and security practices, and you can really watch your progress and how fast or slow you are with the progress. So downloading this Excel sheet is definitely of a great value. And I do recommend definitely to everyone to take a look into it because it's a really great project. Okay, that was for OpenSAM. And in the slides, there is actually the last thing, which, well, the last OWASP project, which I would like to cover, and that is owasp zap. So owasp zap is not a document, not a methodology, not a standard. It's actually a tool. So you can download owasp zap easily. It runs on Windows and Linux without any problem. And I will just give you an idea how the tool looks like and some tips and tricks for using it. So I'm inside the Kali. So Kali comes actually preloaded with Zap, but no worries. We will get into explanation what Kali is in few more minutes. So let me start the Zap. It takes some time to load, but it should be rather quick. Okay, the main reason why I have recommended Zap proxy to many developers is because there is quite powerful scanner built in owasp zap, and even if you are a developer who doesn't really have strong security background, you can still use this tool. It's completely for free, and it can give you some results, right? Because the scanner there is, as I said, quite powerful. So you can definitely use this tool as a part of your security uh, development process or secure development process, while let's say after each release, or actually before you release the application to production, let's say while it's still in test or acceptance environment, you can scan it with owasp zap, and maybe you will be nicely surprised how many vulnerabilities it can actually find. So here it just asks you, okay, do you want to persist this session? Well, this is just going to be a quick demo, so no, I don't want to persist it. And as I said, the cool thing about this tool is how easy it is to use actually. So let's say that you want to do automatic scan, some application you want to scan. So I will just scan DVVA. Okay, yeah, let's say I will take the URL. yeah, we can remove the login PHP, and you just hit the attack button, and that's all you actually need to do. If you hit the attack button, two things will happen. First of all, the spidering or crawling will take place. That means that owasp will try to find additional links and forms in the application, uh, and expand the attack surface. And as, as, as soon as it's done spidering, it will actually start active scanning. So let's check it out. I just click attack, and here you can see spidering. That was very quick, and now it actually started with active scan. So that should be also quite quick, because there is just well, yeah, there are just few files to be scanned. So in this case, that was really quick. And you already have some findings like a directory browsing, so you can check whether it's false positive or not. Here it says that for this URL, it identified the directory browsing. So if you click here in the upper part, you can see the request, and you can also check the response. And yeah, just by looking at it, you actually see last modified and index off. So yeah, you just found a vulnerability, although it's probably low risk, but still. And of course, you can just quick open resend, and you can send the request, and here you see the response. Okay, uh, now there is one thing I would like to explain a bit in more details. What is a problem? If you have an application like this, let's say like DVVA, the application we use for demonstration, where the majority of functionality is accessible only after login, then of course by default you can't really scan it. I mean, you can't scan what is after login with owasp because it doesn't really know uh, what is the URL used for authentication and what are the credentials. So just to give you an example, I can of course sign to log into this application as user with password user, and you can see that indeed after logging there is a functionality, right, which you can access, like CSRF, for example, etc. But the problem is that obviously owasp didn't find that particular file because it didn't have valid session. Therefore it couldn't really find all the links which are available only after login. So now I will show you all the steps which you have to do to be able to do authenticated scans. For me, honestly, it's not that straightforward. I mean, the way how you tell owasp which and where to use the credentials. That's why I have decided to show it to you. So I will log out from this application, and let's just start. So if you want to do authenticated scan, you always have to start with finding the request which is responsible for login. In this case, it's fairly easy. We know it's this one. So you just click on it, and you select the option include in context, and you choose the new context. This screen will pop up where if you click here, uh, you can actually change the name of the context. So I will just call it DVVA. You can even place there some description and include in context. Well, this one is okay, but we actually need one more, because we don't want owasp to think that only login.php is in scope. We want to have the whole DVVA directory actually in scope. So I just click add. Okay, that should do it. As a next step, you have to go to users and click add. Here you can, oh, sorry, I forgot one. You have to start with authorization, sorry, authentication. And here you have to choose the form-based authentication. because you authorize through HTTP form actually. So form-based authentication. Here you have to select a few things. So login form target URL. You can just click this select button, expand the tree, DVVA, and just select this login.php. Select. You can see that Zap actually automatically fills the boxes for you. Uh, One more thing you need to change here is that username parameter is username and password parameter is password. That's fine. Now you can actually switch to users, add, and well, username. That's not the actual username. That's how you want to call that user actually inside this view. So you can just call it my test user, and then the actual username, which is used in the application user, and the actual password, which is for the VVA user. And you click add. Okay, user has been added. And yeah, I do believe that this is pretty much everything. You can just click OK at this moment. You can see that the icon here actually changed. Now you right click on it one more time, and in first step we did include in context. Now you will go one below, flag as context, and you will find this one, DVVA form-based auth login request. This is the one we have just configured. So you click on it. Okay, yeah, in this version actually I have a bit problem with Zap that it seems to not remember the choices regarding the username and password parameter, but hopefully that will change soon. What we need to change here, the only last thing, we need to provide owasp Zap with the string which indicates that you are actually logged out. So that owasp Zap knows if for example, by accident, it hits like logout button. So then, of course, the session will die. So this is the regex or the pattern that owasp will use to identify such a case that the session is no longer valid and it will re-authenticate again. Uh, Usually in real world applications, if something like that happens, that for example you are not active for like 1 hour and you come back to the application and you see that warning, dear user, because of your inactivity you have been logged out. So in such a case you would copy that error message and paste it here. For DVVA you could copy you have logged out, for example, or which is even better, you can just take the title, because this one is definitely unique. I'm not actually sure, so you can just copy this, because maybe if we use just this sentence, you have logged out, maybe that is used already somewhere in the application, somewhere in the text, but this title thing is definitely not. So you can copy it and add it here, regex pattern identified in logged out response, and you just paste it. And you just click OK. That's it. And very last thing you need to do is to click on this button, which is called forced user mode. Now it's disabled, so we need to enable it. Okay, it's enabled. And now we should be actually set for authenticated scan. Let's just quickly double check the context. So you can double click it here, and you can actually see that now it's all fine. Zap replaced the username value and the password value with the placeholders. So it looks that we are really all set. And now let's actually watch the change. So in previous example, when I hit the spidering button, yeah, we just did get back a few pages which doesn't require authorization or authentication at all. What we can do now, we can repeat the same step, meaning you can click on this directory, attack, spider, and if I didn't do any mistake, then you should see now that it will spider the wall application, even those parts which are accessible only after you log in. So spider, here you only have to be careful about selecting the correct context and also the correct user, right? Plus, of course, you have more choices here in advanced tab where you can for example set the maximum depth for crawling and a bunch of additional options. But for me, I don't really need to change any advanced options now. I can just select the user and hit start scan, and you can actually see that indeed, because we configured zap uh, correctly, you can see that much more uh, pages were discovered. Also, this tree was expanded heavily, and you can see that now we have access to scripts like security.php, phpinfo.php, which Spider didn't find before. So right now we performed what's called authenticated scan, and this is what you can use for your application in case that majority of it or part of it is hidden behind the login. And again, this tool comes for free, and as you saw, it's very easy to use. I mean, especially for the quick scan. If you need to set up the authentication, it gets a bit tricky. It just requires a few more clicks, but I just showed you how to do it in video, so you shouldn't really have any problem with replicating those steps. One more thing which I would recommend you, if you want to expand the number of checks owasp zap actually does. So you can click this icon, which is a marketplace, and here in the marketplace you can actually see the add-ons which are available for you, but you haven't installed them. Here you can see what's the status of particular add-on, whether it's release, beta, alpha. I would recommend you installing the active scanner rules, because you can see that that will expand or increase the number of checks quite a lot. So these are all the additional checks you receive just by installing this add-on. And there is somewhere also passive, yeah, right here, passive scan rules. So again, if you install this, uh, these are the additional checks owasp zap will do for you. How to install it? Well, you just click this tick box and install selected, and you are done. You have just now add-on to your owasp zap. Okay, now let me go back to the slides. So we actually did cover, at least to some extent, 5 owasp projects, which are my personal favorites. Uh, One more thing, I would definitely like to recommend you to get in touch with your local chapter, because that's usually the place you can meet similarly minded people, people who have similar or even same interests as you have, and they are usually like technical talks, so you can even learn something interesting and useful. So I will just show you how to do it. It's fairly easy. So you can just open Google or go directly to owasp.org, and here at the bottom you can see a section called chapters. So let's say I will give you an example, because I am a Czech Republic chapter lead, so I will just show you that chapter page. So you select the continent where you live. Well, for me it's Europe, and now the Czech Republic one for me. And usually, well, every chapter uh, might have different look and also bit different information on the main page of their chapter, but in general you should be able to find there contacts for the chapter leaders. If you, for example, want to help them with some activity, like, or if you are a speaker and would you like to speak on next chapter meeting, you can just contact them. And also the information about the upcoming events. So this is very useful. For us, we actually had 2 sessions planned this year in March and in May, but unfortunately due to COVID, we had to cancel both of them, which is really sad because we had great speakers and great venues. Yeah, most of the things were ready, but well, safety is on the first place. But no worries, guys. I mean, if you are watching from Czech Republic, definitely in Q3 or Q4, depending on this whole situation with COVID, we will be back with more events. But if you are, for example, from Scotland, you can just check Scotland page and you have upcoming events. And here is URL where you can buy or actually get the tickets, because there is one more important thing. Chapter meetings are for free, so you don't have to pay anything to go there. Okay, so that's for, well, that's the mention about chapter meetings. I really do recommend you guys checking it out. Try it at least one time to see whether you like it or not, but it's usually time well spent. And most importantly, please consider joining owasp. Because obviously, as I said, we are vendor neutral. Um, we as a owasp, well, we take some money from sponsors, obviously, because we do need some money to actually commit to the owasp mission, meaning to be able to bring content to people and, for example, organize the chapter meetings, because you can imagine that organizing chapter meetings is actually yeah, quite costly thing. So if you have some foreigner speakers, we need to cover their accommodation and flight tickets. Usually there is food. For example, during our chapter meetings in Prague, we serve pizza. There is some refreshment provided during the day, etc., etc. So there are many costs, and obviously we need sponsors to support us. Otherwise, we couldn't make such a meetings, right? So if you have well, last time I checked, it cost $50 per year. So if you have $50 which you can spend, please consider becoming a paid owasp member, because well, you will spend just a $50, but you will help owasp a lot. So thank you for considering it. Okay, now about to set our own lab. This is actually a very important topic. Before we go into it in more depth, I just would like to explain how important it is. I mean, having your own lab where you can practice stuff is a crucial thing. Uh, why? Well, if I should follow the points in the slides, you will learn so much just by installing and configuring things. So that is indeed true. I mean, have you ever tried to configure Apache server? Well, if not, then you really should, because if you configure something, then you will learn what are those things which can go wrong or which you can screw up, which then can turn into security vulnerabilities. And you can challenge yourself and you can say, okay, now I'm going to really configure Apache related to best security practices. And you can trust me that by doing this kind of things, like configuring software, managing your own AD, for example, that is a great learning experience. Of course, you will learn a lot, but also in your lab you can fuzz or scan as much as you want without worrying about lawsuit. So for example, let's say that you have decided to experiment with Python and you have developed some cool script which can, fuzz the web server. And obviously you just can't run it on any host which is out there reachable on the internet, because that is not allowed. But if you run it in your own local lab, that's all fine. I mean, even if you crash the Apache server, no one will going to blame you because it's your lab. So that is second important point. And the next one, you can actually watch the impact of your activities on the environment. So for example, you might be wondering, okay, if I run owasp scan, how much memory will it cost on server side? And that's, if you have your own lab, that's super easy because you just use, well, whatever utility you use for monitoring resources on Linux, then you run the owasp scan, and you can directly see whether the memory usage increased by 0.5% or by 20%. So this is actually a great thing about testing in your environment, that you can really see the results in real time. And of course, there are many more advantages. It should be noted that there is definitely no one lab to fit all scenario solution, and depends on which area of hacking you would like to practice. You probably will need to have different labs available. So just to give you description of how my lab looks like. So I have actually three labs. First one is for infrastructure and AD related attacks. I have DC there, bunch of clients, some file server and stuff like that. So it simulates very small network, but it's definitely sufficient for my testing. Then I have a second lab with different OSCs, which is mostly for exploitation. So I have Windows with different service pack and stuff like that. And third lab I have for web hacking. So I have a combo. One is Apache with PHP. Second is IIS, which can run .NET. And there is one more machine with Tomcat, which can run a Java code. So depending on which area I would like to focus, uh, such a VM I can start. I should also mention that cloud is a very popular choice nowadays. I mean, cloud is definitely great, especially if you have to manage your own red team infrastructure, because and the redirectors especially, because you can spin up new machines very fast. For example, if you use Terraform, then you can spin up new machine in AVS with 2 or 3 commands. So that's pretty awesome. On the other hand, honestly, I still do prefer to have my own lab running in my own hardware, which is actually in my own place. So I have literally complete control over it. It definitely costs some additional money, because you need, well, depending on what kind of lab you want to build, but you need to have at least some hardware. You definitely don't need, at least for beginnings, like machine for $10K. That would be just too much, especially if you just want to have Apache with PHP. For that, you are just good with laptop. Laptop can serve you as your lab basically. And one more thing which I don't like about the clouds is that, for example, AWS gives you a limitation what images or what version of operating system you actually can run. And this is, especially for lab purposes, not really convenient, right? So uh, yeah, this is my view. I'm not saying cloud is bad, but I'm maybe just too old school for this, but I really do prefer to have a lab hosted locally. You will also need the virtualization software. I use VMware because well, I just like it more. The VirtualBox is a second option, and what's cool about it that it's for free, so you can download it and install it now and use it for virtualization. VMware is not free. I mean, there is VMware Player, which actually is for free, but that one has limited functionality compared to full-fledged VMware Workstation. And honestly, with VMware Workstation, I have had a very good experience. It's stable. Yeah, I mean, just like it. So that is my personal preference. But for building our own lab, the one which we are going to build today, VMware and VirtualBox, both of them are fine. Yeah, well, obviously I can't really help you with the hardware part. That's up to you. You know best your possibilities and limitations. So, and also how much money you can afford to spend for the lab. So here the choice is mostly yours. And now let's go one slide ahead. Okay, and we are at the section setting up the lab. So, by the way, those symbols like glasses with demo, that actually means that I'm going to show you practical examples. We will basically, what we will do during this chapter. So now let's imagine for a second that we all have that awesome new and shiny hardware and VirtualBox or VMware. This is the precondition for continuing in this exercise. You will need to download two VMs. First is Kali Linux and second is owasp BVA. I will explain in few more minutes what those are. And for building our lab, basically our goal is to have both machines imported into VMware or VirtualBox and make sure they can talk to each other. So it means that you can ping them and yeah, they are basically on the same network. And also we will add a burp to the mix, but well, let's see whether we can still cover it today or if we will keep it for later. So let me actually start with the hands-on things. Switching back here, what you can see here is actually Kali Linux. Where you can find it, again, that's very easy. Kali Linux download. Then depending on whether you are using VirtualBox on VMware, you can just specify, like in my case, VMware. Official Kali download sounds reasonable. Okay, these are the installers. We don't want installers, we just want VMware image. So this is the link to follow. And here you can see that you can download either a Kali Linux VMware 64-bit image or 32-bit. Same for VirtualBox, same for Hyper-V. So depending on which virtualization software you are using, please download the proper package for you. And for owasp BVA, downloading it is also super simple. So owasp BVA download, and it's this one, the first link. Yeah, I do accept, why not? And here you can actually download the OWA or the zip file, again, depends. So you just download it. So as soon as you download both the Kali machine and the owasp BVA, what you have to do then is again very simple. You just click File, Open, and you will just find the in my case .vmx file. You will just double click it. VMware loads the image, and then you can just press the play button and your Kali machine will pop up. The same thing will happen for owasp BVA. So you just open it through VMware or VirtualBox and you just click that green play button. Your image will be loaded and everything is good to go. For broken web application, you won't see much actually. When it boots up, you will just see this kind of default welcome screen, which is important though because it says what is the IP address of owasp BVA instance. Yeah, one more thing I should probably say, the very important one. You must make sure about one very important thing, that both your owasp BVA and also your Kali machine are using the same network. Otherwise, they would probably not see each other. So let's just check this one. owasp broken web application, you just click VM and settings, and you should see that my network adapter is not. Okay, that's cool. That actually means that this machine is kind of hidden, right, uh, behind my main or so-called host OS. It's not visible on my like real network, which I have here. And you must make sure that the other machine, Calivan, has the same setting. So again, VM, settings, and let's just check out that it is in, okay, it also uses net. And if they both use net, it means that they are in the same subnet and they should be able to talk to each other. So we can verify that, right? So I have shell opened here, and I can just issue the ifconfig command, and you can see that this is my IP. And now what is the IP of the owasp BVA? And you can see that they are both in that 192.168.65 subnet. So I just note the IP address of owasp BVA. I open browser in my Kali machine. Oh, sorry. And this is the default page. This is what you want to see, the default page of owasp BVA. Now, very quick explanation why I wanted you to actually download this particular image, and it's because well, it it doesn't contain just one application where you can practice your hacking skills, but as you can see, it actually has many of them like preloaded, and they are ready to be hacked. You have those, let's say, training applications. You have already seen one of them when I was showing you how to use Zap. That's the non-vulnerable web application. And you just click on it, application is ready, and you can use it. There is also WebGoat, which we will use, and it's very popular for educational training, let's say. uh, WebGoat, WebGoat, if I remember, yeah, started WebGoat, you see that it works out of the box. On top of that, except those training applications, there is also another section, old vulnerable version of real applications. So if you are already tired from those, hack me applications, and you would like to see if you are skilled enough to find a 0-day in Joomla, well, you can just click here and you see that this version is actually quite dated already, but that's okay. I mean, uh, one time in past it was actually the most up-to-date version. So here you can actually practice your skills and see if back then you would be able to actually find O-Day in Joomla. Don't ruin yourself the fun. Don't immediately, Google for Joomla, this and that version exploits, because you would probably find it very quickly. But try the good old, manual approach. Try to look here and there and find some security flaws. So that was a brief explanation of owasp BVA, and also and how to make the machines to talk to each other. Now the explanation what actually is the Kali Linux. Well, Kali Linux is based on Debian, so I would almost say a normal Linux distribution, except one thing which is actually different, and the thing is that it comes preloaded with bunch of hacking tools. So this is the main difference, which you will see right after downloading Kali, that you can click this icon in the upper left corner, this dragon, and you click the dragon, and you can actually see that there are many categories. For example, web application analysis, so you can click on the name of this category, and you see again there are some subcategories, so some CMS and framework identifications. You can expand it and see that there is VP scan, for example. There is burp suite tool, which we will use a lot, and I would even say mostly during upcoming videos. There is owasp, which I have already shown, and bunch of other scanners. There are tools for wireless attacks, so you can see there is a bunch of them actually. So this is the main advantage, and I would even say main reason why so many people are downloading Kali, because you otherwise you would have to download Ubuntu, Debian, or any other distro, and then install the tools manually. Here you have them by default. So at least I do believe that this is the main reason why people are actually using Kali. Uh, I have created a list of commands which you should definitely run once you download and run your Kali machine for the first time. This is definitely number one, sudo apt update and sudo apt full upgrade dash I. So that will make sure that after you run this command, your system will be completely up to date with all the latest packages updated, uh, and yeah, the latest patches, so to say. So updating your system, that's definitely first thing you want to do. Second thing you want to do is run the passvd command. So passvd command allows you in Linux world to actually change your password or password of the current user. So uh, this is definitely recommended because you know that well, anyone can download Kali distro, and also credentials for this Kali distro are obviously publicly available. So for the latest one, the username is Kali with password Kali. And of course, that means that if you don't change the credentials and you, for example, forgot to lock your laptop somewhere, everyone can still log in to the Kali, even if Kali locks after like 5 minutes of inactivity if you don't change your default password. So please do change it. Well, there are definitely many more things you could do with fresh installation of Linux system, but these are the two most important ones. Then these are rather checks, because for demos we will actually I will show you in injection section. You will need to have working Apache. So this is the command you can use to actually see whether the Apache is running on your system. And you can see that in my case, yes, it says it's running, which is exactly what I need. I mean, uh, if I receive the response which says inactive, then I just need to run similar command, except that instead of status, I will specify the start command. So this one will actually start the Apache in case it's not running. Same for MySQL, because we will also need database. So you can see that my database is active and running as well. Okay, you might want to verify that actually you can indeed access the HTML and PHP, and that actually Apache server can well, has PHP integrated and PHP executes without any problem. So just open the terminal and run this command. What this command does, it will actually create a new file under these folders called test HTML. So paste. Oh, sorry. I copied just two. Okay. I don't want to store it. Sorry. Okay, much better. and I can just put some content there. Hi, this is a test. Close, save changes, yes. And I can right away execute the other command, which is supposed to test whether PHP works fine on your system. Okay, here, let's use this code. Okay, and let's save it. Okay, now let's just go back to our browser again. And let's see. Ideally, if everything works properly, we now should be able to access that file test.html and see the content we just put there. Okay, hi, this is test, perfect. And now we can execute the other one, which is called test.php.php, and this one runs fine as well. So at this particular moment, if I should do a small summary, you actually have two machines, Kali, which you updated, you changed the default password, you activated the MySQL database and Apache, you created two files there just to see whether everything is working fine, and you have also verified that from a Kali machine you can access the owasp BVA server. Yeah, so this is the recap, and this is the ideal status uh, where we will actually end today. Okay, so guys, that's everything for now. You might have one complaint, right? Because if I scroll up to the agenda, you can see that injections were originally still part of the agenda for today. But I will tell you something. I have already tried to actually record this video. I mean, this introduction of OWASP projects plus injections, and the final video had 4 hours and 20 minutes. So I just said, okay, that's just too damn long. Let's make it shorter and let's divide it. So sorry about that. You won't really see the demonstration of injection attacks today, but I can promise you then I will try to come up with new video focusing on exploiting injection flaws this week or next week. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new and useful, which you can hopefully apply in your daily life. And let's just stay in touch. I mean, if you like the video, you can always follow me on Twitter. My handle is rnmx123. And you can definitely hit subscribe button for this YouTube channel so that you are notified once I publish new video. And also, let's stay in touch. I mean, if you add me on Twitter, I will most probably follow you back. And then, you can just send me DM if you have some questions. Uh, and that's pretty much all about it. So, thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to see you soon.